The U.S. Postal Service honors John Lennon on a new commemorative Forever stamp. This stamp, honoring legendary singer and songwriter John Lennon, is the latest in a series of music icon stamps. Beloved around the world, John Lennon was both successful as a founding member of the Beatles and as a solo artist. His music continues to speak for truth, tolerance, and peace.
I know that my father would have been really thrilled to be accepted in this way, officially, on a stamp. About as official as it gets, I think. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that. And I know he'd be thrilled, as I am, as my mom is. And I'd like to introduce her. She'd like to say a few things. I'm gonna go fetch her now.
Thank you so much for being here today. Even if it's 5 or 10 people, I would have appreciated. But look at this, it's beautiful.
Yay.
Thank you.
Guys.
We're here for the first day of issue. It's for the John Lennon stamp. Tell me what you think about the stamp.
I think the stamp is phenomenal. I've loved the Beatles since I was a little child, when my father would play Beatles music on Sunday mornings when we were having breakfast. And so when I found out that we could come here to the stamp event, it was really a great experience.
And it was a wonderful...
It is a wonderful experience. The stamp is wonderful, and the photographer that did the stamp is really great.
And your thoughts on this
Yes,
stamp?
and I've been a stamp collector since I was a little girl, and I was lucky enough to get the day off to come here, and I love John Lennon and the Beatles, so here we are.
And yes,
And
this
this
is the actual...
Yes, this is one of the products that they have, one of the pieces. It's a picture of him, and then inside are a bunch of little goodies that look like old-fashioned 45 records with his picture on. So.
And you were a John Lennon and Beatles fan?
I am.
Well, first day of issue.
Yes.
John Lennon.
Don't miss it.
Mail letter today.
Yes, lots of letters.
Lots of letters. You played a big part on this stamp. Tell us how this stamp came about.
Well, it was up to the post office. I submitted a lot of pictures for them. I'm sure they had a lot of others to choose from. And so I'm absolutely thrilled that they chose mine. It's been a long process. They take their time figuring out what they're going to do. It's a government agency, so you can imagine it moves rather slowly. But here we are today, and it's actually happening, and it actually exists, and people are buying the stamps, and they're going to start mailing things today. And John's face and message is going to be all over the world. Because I think what's more important than John's face and John Lennon being honored, the whole point is that he's being honored because of the message of peace and love that he and his wife Yoko shared with the world. And I think that that's what's really important, is that more people hear about John Lennon and they'll hear about the message of peace and love. It's very difficult to be peaceful. It's very easy to get angry. We all get irritated and angry every day. But to stay peaceful, it takes a lot of work. And I think that's what John and Yoko's message is about working to stay peaceful and spread peace among our fellow people.
And do you want to share how the photo came about? You were talking about him being a simple man, wanting a simple shot.
Yes, well, John liked taking things pretty easy. He was in the middle of recording his album, and he really didn't want to spend an afternoon in a photo studio having, a whole crew take pictures. So we needed a whole series of pictures that were the exact same size, so that his face could be on the back of the album cover, and different flaps could fold over it and change the expressions. So I went to his apartment about midday before he went to the recording studio. And I just went out on the terrace of the apartment he had at the time and put some paper on a brick wall, just to have a white background, and put the camera on a tripod so it wouldn't move, and all the pictures would be the same size. And then we just took about 12 rolls of pictures of his face, making all different expressions. And you can see the results in the album. The original album cover has the flaps. I think the CD, they don't really have flaps on a CD anymore. So you don't get the original concept, but it gave us a lot of great pictures, just total full, face portraits of John.
And what would he think of this
That
stamp?
same day, after we took the picture of his face, he said, let's take some more pictures. And we were on the roof with the skyline all around us. And I had given him a New York City t-shirt a year earlier. And so I asked him if he still had the t-shirt, and he said he did, and he went and put it on. So I took my other most famous photo that same day that I took the picture for the stamp.
And what would he think of this stamp?
Oh, I think he'd be very, very happy. He liked being recognized. He liked being honored. I'm sure he would be absolutely thrilled that he's being honored in this way. There's a lot of stamps, but there's really not that many people. If you count up how many people there are in the country and how many people actually end up on a stamp, it's quite an honor. So I think he'd be very, very happy. I'm only sorry that he's not here today to share it.
Since I am a stamp collector, one of the things I like to do with first day ceremonies is to actually make to get a map of the area, and then from there make a homemade envelope and then put the stamps on there and have them canceled. So you can see right here it says Central Park on these, and that's where the stamps are, right next to it. And hopefully they'll cancel it for me. It'll be a nice collection or a nice souvenir for the collection.
How long have you been collecting stamps?
I've been collecting since 2005.
Well, good. And what do you think of this stamp?
Personally, I actually think it's a pretty creative stamp, and I think it's actually a very nice stamp, and I think it'll be an excellent addition for many collectors, and it'll also be a nice commemorative to a famous musician.
And next to me, we got some rock and roll in here. Tell me, what did you think about this stamp?
Oh, I thought it's bitchin'. It was really fun. It was great to see the turnout. Lots of people came to commemorate, and it was great to see John Lennon and Yoko Ono here representing him and his legacy.
My mom has worked at the post office for 30 years.
Yeah, she does.
And she's right here. Come on in. So we love John Lennon. We have John Lennon tattoos. I have worked with Bob Gruen as a photographer, so all of this brings all of our hobbies together, and it was a great day.
A great day. So go out, mail a letter, over everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you. Deliver. Yeah, they do. Postal proud. I like that. Postal proud. Well, thank you.
I'm Dennis Elsas, and I'm on the air every weekday afternoon on WFUV, weekends on SiriusXM's Classic Vinyl, and every week I co-host the Beatles Fab Forum on the SiriusXM radio. It was 44 years ago, September 28th, 1974, that I got to spend more than 2 hours talking live with John on WNEW-FM. It was an unforgettable experience that remains a top highlight for me of my broadcasting career. So it is a very special honor to serve as your Master of Ceremonies as we dedicate the John Lennon Commemorative Forever Stamp, which is part of the Postal Service's Music Icon series. It's so wonderful to see the outpouring of love and support for John from so many people. He would have welcomed a celebration in Central Park, the heart of New York, and the city that first introduced John to America.
It's a privilege to commemorate singer-songwriter John Lennon, one of the most celebrated musicians and iconic personalities of the 20th century. Most Americans were introduced to John Lennon on a single night in February 1964. That evening, 73 million viewers tuned in to watch the Beatles on The Ed Sullivan Show. Those 4 young men from Liverpool, with tremendous creativity and musical ability, would quickly revolutionize and redefine rock and roll. Over the course of John Lennon's career, from the small venues of Liverpool and Hamburg to stadium performances and worldwide acclaim and adoration, popular music became infinitely varied, open to a wider array of expression, and more reflective of tremendous cultural change. From his time with the Beatles through his final award-winning album with Yoko Ono, Double Fantasy. John Lennon's personal drive and sensibilities pushed music in new directions and created new avenues. He helped pave the way for new musical forms and inspired a generation of musicians and performers. John Lennon was a musical and lyrical genius, and we remain captivated by his amazing songs, his albums, his performances, and his outsized personality. His powerful lyrics and unmistakable voice, as well as his humor and charm and biting wit, are unforgettable to this day. John Lennon's voice and place in the world grew in his years after the Beatles. He gained a creative partner in this phase of his life, Yoko Ono Lennon, and we're pleased to have her with us today. John Lennon was a citizen of the world and indelibly British, but he chose New York City and the United States as his home. He was passionate about America's culture, its freedom of speech, and the opportunity for generational change. Songs like Imagine and Give Peace a Chance captured the evolving public sentiment of the day. John Lennon spoke for his own generation, but his message and his appeal was universal. Through his music and his fame, he championed peace. He asked us to imagine a better world and a better way of living with each other. And we continue to be inspired by his music and his memory. The world knows John Lennon as a musical genius and a peace advocate. And yet it may surprise you to learn, he was also a stamp collector and an avid letter writer. Family, friends, and fans received attentive handwritten notes and thoughts throughout his life, which no doubt reflected his mastery of language and lyrics. As a boy, he said he was able to see the world through the stamps he collected. John Lennon had an artist's eye and a passion for the imagery and storytelling associated with the postage stamp. The John Lennon stamp is the most recent addition to a series of stamps commemorating music icons. The stamp pane, created by art director Antonio Alcala and designer Neil Ashby, resembles a vintage 45 RPM record sleeve. Some of us remember that. The back of the pane, displayed here, features the iconic black and white photograph of John Lennon seated at his white piano, which was used to promote the Imagine album in 1971. That photo was taken by Peter Fordham. The stamp artwork illustrates a 1974 photograph taken by the accomplished photographer Bob Gruen. And Bob is here with us today. And Bob will be up in short order to share a story or two. The original black and white photograph has been given 4 different treatments with gradations of color. The stamp features John Lennon's signature and a small peace symbol which recognizes his enduring legacy as an advocate for peace. Along the bottom are the words "Forever" and "USA." These words signify that John Lennon will be remembered for his music and his many contributions to our culture and society forever.
I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker, Bob Gruen. The ultimate photographer of many rock and roll legends like Bob Dylan, David Bowie, Led Zeppelin, Elton John, Tina Turner, and Aerosmith. and most especially John Lennon during his New York years. It is Bob's photo for the Walls and Bridges album that is featured on today's Music Icon stamp. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bob Gruen.
Well, thank you all for coming here today. And I want to thank the United States Postal Service for choosing my photo of John Lennon for their Music Icon series and for inviting me to speak here today. And I want to thank my mother, who taught me photography, and she was an avid stamp collector all her life. So, Mom, this one's for you. I am very honored to be here. When I took this picture 44 years ago, I never dreamed that it would be an official United States postage stamp. I was a teenager when I first saw the Beatles on TV with my friends, and of course we all became immediate fans. But it was later, as John and Yoko created their art projects for peace, that my admiration and my respect grew. Their focus was serious, but they always had a great sense of humor. In the summer of 1971, I was excited to hear that John and Yoko had come to New York City, and in fact, they had moved into an apartment a half a block from mine. Some weeks later, I went to the Apollo Theater to see a benefit concert that Aretha Franklin was performing. And as I walked in, I was stunned to hear the announcer introduce John Lennon and Yoko Ono and the Plastic Ono Band. I was in the same room as John and Yoko. Though we exchanged a few words backstage, I didn't really get to meet them until a few months later. I was asked by a journalist to take some photos during an interview for a magazine. As things turned out, they liked the photos, and they used one in the package for their Sometime in New York City album. After that, I was in touch with them more regularly, and we became friends. John was a very perceptive person, always talking about the reality that was around him, but always making jokes and keeping everyone laughing. He was working on his Walls and Bridges album in late August 1974 when he called to ask me to take a series of close-up photos of his face for the album cover. He said he wanted it done quickly and simply at his penthouse apartment on the East Side. So I kept it simple, taping a piece of white background paper to a brick wall on his terrace, and I took the photos that appear on the album cover, and now here on this stamp. After we took the portraits, he asked me to take several more photos to use to publicize the album. With the skyline of New York all around us, I asked John if he still had the t-shirt I had given him a year earlier. He said he did, and he got it and he put it on. I suggested he wear it because I saw him as a New Yorker, knowing how much he loved living in the city. He called New York the center of the world. Now, I think John Lennon is being celebrated here today not only as a musician, but as someone who continues to inspire people around the world. With his wife, Yoko Ono, he inspired people to imagine. I've always admired John and Yoko because of their dedication to promote peace in the world. And I hope that honoring John on this stamp will not only please his many fans, but help to bring a new generation to his music and his art. And that will encourage people to go in peace, to live in peace, and to imagine peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Great trip down memory lane. At this time, I am delighted to introduce a very special guest speaker, Sean Ono Lennon. A remarkable man, a native New Yorker. A remarkable man, a remarkable man, do you want to read it? A native New Yorker who has charted his own journey as a musician, songwriter, and producer, and as an activist for environmental and social causes. We're honored to have him join us. Please give a warm welcome to Sean Ono Lennon.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here and thrilled. There's a famous saying in England that to be born British is to have won the lottery of life. Well, the fact that I'm American is evidence that my father disagreed. My father and mother came to New York as immigrants, and they loved New York. I know that my dad felt that to be a New Yorker meant that you came here and loved it. And so he was equally a New Yorker to all of us. But he fought very hard to get his green card, famously. It wasn't easy at the time, which you'd think it's kind of surprising in retrospect, isn't it? But he fought very hard to get his green card because he wanted to live in America, and he loved this beautiful country and beautiful city. And I think it's interesting because what makes America beautiful is the open arms that we have in accepting people from around the world who want to participate in this great democracy. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, keeping that in mind, I know that my father would have been really thrilled to be accepted in this way, officially, on a stamp. About as official as it gets, I think. So I just wanted to say that. And I know he'd be thrilled, as I am, as my mom is. And I'd like to introduce her. She'd like to say a few things. I'm going to go fetch her now.
I like this USA Forever. I don't know who thought of it, but when John died, and I said there'll be no funeral for John because John is going to be forever. And sure enough, it's still going. Everybody loves to listen to John's songs, and I'm very proud of it. But also, the fact that this thing, imagine, and you guys are here, it's incredible. I never thought of it. I thought maybe like 10 or 15 people would be here. And, and like Hitler, I had to say, well, we don't have very many people yet, but this is going to be a big group. Anyway, I think that you know more about John than me, maybe. So I'm not going to talk about John and John's music, because John's music is very, very special, especially now that he's independent. His songs became very, very deep as well. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm. I noticed.
Okay.
I've noticed, yes.
Good. And I'm very proud of that, because if John just went with me and then he became la 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 da 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 or something like that, people say, well, that's Yoko's fault. Well, it's always my fault. But I had so much enjoyment being with John. I am so lucky. I feel very, very lucky. And yes, the most complaint I have is that he's not here. But he's somewhere in the sky, I think.
I love you. That's great. Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here today. Even if it's 5 or 10 people, I would have appreciated But look at this. It's beautiful.
Yay.
Thank
you
you.
guys.
With us is Dennis Elsas, and you're from?
I'm from WFUV, I'm from SiriusXM, and when I was on WNEW-FM, that's when I interviewed John.
And tell us a little bit about that interview.
It was more or less a surprise. I had met him a few weeks earlier, and I invited him up to the radio station, and when he agreed to come, I couldn't say anything on the air because I was sure that he wasn't going to come, or it just wasn't, no. And then we spent 2+ hours, and it's the highlight of my broadcasting career, and luckily it's become one of the better known interviews with him. So,
And tell us what you highlight of that interview.
a highlight of that interview, I think, was just the fact that, as I said in the speech, just 10 years before, I'm a Beatle fan. I'm watching the Ed Sullivan Show, and there it is 10 years later, and I'm sitting and I'm talking to him about everything. And he made me feel so comfortable, and so it's just a very, very special day.
And what do you think about this stamp?
Oh, I think this is fabulous. I mean, it's so wonderful. He loved New York. He had his issues with trying to stay in America for a while, but they worked that out. And the fact that the government and the USPS is now honoring him with a stamp, it's just wonderful. And the fact that Yoko could be here with Sean, that was great.
It was wonderful. So go out, mail a letter today, right?
Yeah.
Don't forget about writing letters.
Yeah. And put a postage stamp on it. I don't know if anybody will put the Lennon stamp on. They may want to just keep it.
I'm going to do both. I'm going
Yes,
to keep
me
it
too.
and send it. So.
Me too. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And this is the John Lennon stamp, first day of issue.
Yes. Buy your stamps, write letters, forget email.
Exactly.
Do old school, that works. Because you get excited when you get a letter in the mail and it's handwritten and all that.
John Lennon, I know.
Yeah.
It's almost extinct.
Yeah, totally. I write letters still, but that's just me. Old school.
And I'm Kristal Hart reporting from Central Park here in New York City. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and thanks for watching.